She's accused of trying to kill her husband twice with fentanyl, according to police. The second time, she was already out on bond for attempted murder after that first try. Prosecutors say her husband was in grave danger. When it came time for a judge to decide whether she should be out on bond again, her husband, the victim in this case, took the stand on her behalf and asked the judge to let her go. Something you just don't see in these felony cases. They'd been married for nearly 30 years. This is 6 on Your Side Investigates. Each week we take you inside local cases and the courtroom with records and data, no speculation. I'm your host, Jen Horton, investigative reporter with 20 years on the job, covering violent crime and corruption right here in Alabama. This case is one of the more bizarre things I've covered. Today, I'm setting up the evidence, and then you'll hear from one of our reporters, Shane Trail, who was in the courtroom when her husband took the stand. You don't want to miss that. Let's get into it. Sarah Baker built her career in Cullman County courtrooms, first working in the district attorney's office, then as a defense attorney. She spent years arguing cases. By November 2025, she was the one being charged. Her husband is James Dole Baker. He goes by Dole Baker. In Cullman County, they were not strangers. Nearly 30 years of marriage, a long history in that one community. And now, according to court documents, that marriage is at the center of an 11-count felony indictment. Court documents say Baker put fentanyl into Dole Baker's food and drink, not once. Court records point to 3 separate dates, September 4th, September 12th, and September 20th, 2025, each one its own count of attempted murder. Prosecutors also charged her with conspiracy, alleging that sometime between September 1st and November 25th, she agreed with someone else to cause her husband's death and engaged that person to provide the fentanyl. An 11-count indictment once the grand jury was all done. Conspiracy to commit murder, 3 counts of attempted murder, domestic violence, elder abuse, distribution and solicitation of a controlled substance, 4 counts over. The Cullman Police Department arrested her. The Alabama Bar Association suspended her law license the following month, and she posted bond. She was out, living free under one condition, among others, to stay away from her husband. Baker's bond conditions were specific. No contact with the victim, her husband. Surrender her passport. She was even cleared to travel out of state once, but by all appearances, she was compliant. But according to the state's most recent motion to revoke her bond, Cullman police received information that Baker was frequenting the place her husband was staying, paying his caregivers, involving herself in his medical care, delivering groceries. Then June 11th, that's the date prosecutors point to first. According to the motion, Baker asked one of her husband's caregivers for something specific, an empty medication bottle from inside the house. All this was allegedly happening outside the house. She told the caregiver it could be hers, it could be his. They got it for her. 18 days later, June 29th, Baker was back at the house. She handed a caregiver a bag. Her instructions, put it inside the safe. Investigators believed that bag held the same bottle, only now it wasn't empty. Caregivers grew suspicious, and they called it in. July 9th, Cullman police came back, this time with a search warrant. Inside that bottle, approximately 12.2 grams of purple-tinted powder, which is the typical appearance of illicit fentanyl. It field tested positive for fentanyl, the same drug at the center of the original charges. The state promptly filed a motion to revoke bond, saying, quote, the defendant's recent actions while on bond are alarming, especially alarming given that the defendant is charged with trying to kill the victim by putting fentanyl powder in his food. Prosecutors didn't ask for a slap on the wrist. They asked the judge to revoke her bond outright or hold her without bond until a hearing could happen. Prosecutors told the court Dole Baker was in, quote, grave danger if the wife stayed free. The judge issued that warrant. Baker was found and taken into custody at a house in Mountain Brook. Now she'd have to answer for it in front of a judge and in front of the one person prosecutors say her freedom was endangering. And he was about to walk in that courtroom and defend her. Sarah Baker's defense did not concede a thing. Her attorney, Robin Wolf, filed a response on July 10th and used the state's own police report against it. A witness identified as Cassie told police that, quote, To her knowledge, Sarah has not been coming inside, even while acknowledging Baker paid the caretakers by dropping off checks and asked about Dole's status. The state, Wolf argued, never alleged a single call, text, or direct message. She was, the filing said, quote, neither a flight risk nor a threat to the community. July 17th, Circuit Judge Gregory Williams, the hearing that would decide whether Sarah Baker went home or back to a cell. That's when Dole Baker took the stand for his wife. He told the court he had asked the district attorney and Baker's own lawyer for a chance to see her. He said there'd been no contact since her first arrest. I have no idea why we're here today, he told the judge. We kept it clean all the way. Judge Williams believed him on that point. No direct contact. That much he agreed was true. It didn't matter, though, because Williams found she'd violated her bond anyway, not through contact, but by a new criminal offense, what he called getting, quote, a weight of fentanyl you don't see very often into her husband's own home. She possesses a danger to our community, the judge said. Getting a new charge is a bond violation. However, Sarah Baker hasn't been charged with a new offense yet. One more thing happened in that courtroom on that same afternoon. Baker entered a plea, not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. The judge ordered her evaluation. And one more thing, a witness listed in Baker's case is also one of her former clients. That woman is 39 years old, and she was indicted separately, accused of swallowing fentanyl to destroy evidence in a case Baker was representing her in at the time. Those cases share a witness. Shane Trowell, welcome back to the pod. This is not your garden variety felony case. In this instance, you were in the courtroom for the first time when Sarah and Dole Baker saw each other for the first time since her arrest in November.
Right.
What was the mood? Did they look at each other? Did they exchange any words? I mean, this is such an odd situation.
Right. And it really is. I mean, it's a big courtroom, right? And just a handful of people are in that courtroom with two journalists and the judge, the state, the defense. So big room, not a lot of people in it, and it's really contrasted by the fact that there are so few people in a room that does have so much space for more. And so you really notice that Doyle Baker is there, and he and Sarah, I don't see them exchange any kind of words or anything like that. What I will say is, on Sarah Baker's face, especially whenever he goes up to testify on her behalf, a softening in her eyes is the best way that I can describe it. She looks like she's looking at her husband. It's hard to see from my perspective in the gallery further back what Doyle necessarily looks like, or if he's making direct eye contact with her, but by the way that he spoke about her and spoke on her behalf, in behalf of her having her bond not revoked, you can only imagine that he's not shying away from the fact that his wife is sitting there in chains.
So just to set the scene here, Sarah Baker is in court because everyone's fighting or arguing over her motion for bond.
Right.
She wants to have bond. She was out on bond. There's been another accusation of another fentanyl issue being involved in the home with Dole.
Right.
So just to set the scene, we're headed into the courtroom, and you walk in as a reporter for WBRC, and you see Dole Baker there, who's in a wheelchair, post-stroke, and you just, I think anybody would presume he's there to testify on behalf of the state because he's the victim.
Right. And that was something that at the beginning of the hearing, there was some discussion between the judge and the defense and the state about whether or not Doyle Baker could even stay in the room for the investigator's testimony, alleging that Sarah Baker had inserted fentanyl somehow back into the home of Mr. Baker. It's unusual because he is there on behalf of the defense, and yet he is also the alleged victim of the person the defense is defending. It's strange, to say the least.
Were you shocked when you finally put that together and you realized that? I mean, that just doesn't happen.
At this point, it is the first time that I've ever seen someone speaking on behalf of the person accused of trying to kill them.
Yeah, this isn't a strange situation. So the investigator testifies first and sets up the evidence that they're making to asked the judge to withdraw her bond again.
Correct. The investigator basically lays out that Sarah Baker has been, for some time on her, while she's been out on bond, stopping by the house of Doyle Baker. Remember, she has a bond on some conditions, and probably the main condition, the biggest condition, is that she doesn't have any contact with Mr. Baker. The investigator alleged that, according to reports from the caretakers, one caretaker who takes care of Doyle Baker in the day, one caretaker who takes care of him at night, according to them, Sarah Baker has not been shy about coming around the house, doing things like dropping off groceries, asking about Mr. Baker and how he's doing. Apparently, she didn't ever go inside the house from the investigator's testimony, but she was at least on the outside, maybe at the end of the drive, and that's about as close as we know that she would have been going up to the house. And the state, I should say, made note of how unusual it is, especially in this circumstance, that Sarah Baker is doing things like running errands and bringing groceries or checks over to the house for the caretakers. The groceries in particular, because remember, the initial allegation that she was arrested for last year is that she tried to poison Doyle Baker using fentanyl in his food or drink. Right. And yet the state noted that she was the one bringing groceries to the house, and they said that that was obviously inappropriate. And their argument was that just that kind of action was enough for the judge to decide that she had broken the no contact portion of her bond agreement. He ultimately did not see it that way, but that was something that the state was trying to argue.
So the investigator takes the stand, he testifies, then Doyle Baker takes the stand on behalf of the defense. During this time, did you witness any interaction between the couple? I mean, was there eye contact?
Right.
Did they exchange words? I mean, just walk us through the courtroom there.
I did not see any words exchanged. And again, like I said before, it's hard for me to see Doyle Baker from behind him, right, to see where his eyes are going. I can say that he's in a wheelchair. He's confined to that. He needs help even having his legs lifted up into the wheelchair so that it can be moved around whenever he's not in a resting position. So he's not in a state where he can be taken up to the witness stand like a traditional witness would be able to. Instead, he is wheeled just right in front of and between the defense and the state. So Sarah Baker is quite literally just there watching her husband defend her. And his contention with being at the bond hearing, if you want to call it contention, his perspective was that they hadn't broke the no contact condition of the bond. He actually says at one point, "I don't even know why we're here." Not to imply like he doesn't have his wherewithal, doesn't have his wits about him, and doesn't understand the situation or the gravity of it, but he doesn't understand from his perspective why we would even be considering a bond being revoked from Sarah Baker whenever in his eyes they never broke contact or never made contact and broke that condition of her bond.
One thing from your reporting that blew me away, he sat on the stand, or it was inferred that he had asked to see her.
Yes. He did say after the judge asked him, or it might have been the defense actually, who asked him, "Have you tried to make visitation rights with Sarah Baker?" And he said, "Yes, I've talked to the defense. I've talked to DA Champ Crocker, the Cullman County DA. And he says that he has actively tried to get visitation hours, visitation time, to be able to see his wife. Again, in this situation, she is accused of trying to poison him using fentanyl. That is an unusual thing to hear then, given that context that he actively wants to try and see her while she's been out on bond.
She's charged with trying to kill him.
That's correct.
Attempted murder.
That's correct.
Wow. Not only charged, she's indicted. So ultimately, the judge decided that they had not violated bond, or she had not violated her bond by reaching out to him, but he decided that she had now created an additional charge or an additional violation, which is a bond violation.
Right. So another condition of her bond, it goes more than just don't have any contact with Doyle Baker. It's also another condition, and a big one in this circumstance is don't commit any other crimes.
Right.
Introducing fentanyl into the home is obviously a crime. And especially the judge noted that the amount was significant as well. So the judge at one point actually says, you are a danger to our community before he revokes her bond. And I think that speaks to how strongly people feel about this case. It's not only something that is impacting this family, but remember, this is somebody who was an attorney, a defense attorney most recently, in this community. She's well known. She has an office in downtown Cullman that has her name on it, or at least did. I haven't been there recently, I suppose, but it did have her name on the glass. So whenever the judge says, you are a danger to our community, it's not just you are a danger to your husband or you are a danger to your family. You are a danger to our community, the people that know you and that you know. That's kind of heavy words in that context.
It is, and I can't think, as we're talking, I'm thinking about any previous attempted murder cases that I've covered, and at no point can I ever remember someone who's out on bond for attempted murder who then gets their bond revoked for, attempting to commit another crime involving that same person. At least it's not coming to mind immediately. That's a pretty narrow scope.
Right. And one thing that we should note, and I'm sure that you will take care of this in other portions of this podcast, but one thing that we should note is that she pleaded not guilty to her charges whenever she was arraigned at the beginning of this hearing before her bond was revoked. She pleaded not guilty by way of mental disease or defect, basically an insanity plea, saying that she's not in her right mind, and therefore she's not guilty of the charges because she was not actively trying to do the thing that she is accused of doing, which is poisoning her husband.
Anything else you think would be pertinent that you observed during that last hearing or that you've learned since you've been covering this case?
Just with time to be able to kind of think about how everything went down, it can't be overstated how astonishing it kind of is, at least from a reporter entering that courtroom in this case, how astonishing it is that Doyle Baker spoke up on behalf of his wife. I think sometimes we have a tendency to think of these kinds of things as straightforward, black and white, wrong and right. This person is accused of having to trying to kill this person. Clearly, that's not the situation we have here. There's some muddled, deeper things, a dynamic, a love, that you're seeing play out and tested to its absolute extremes in this case between Sarah Baker and Doyle Baker. We're going to have to see what ultimately is decided. Her next hearing is not scheduled until December at this point. That could change, and there could be other hearings that come up between now and then. One of those hearings might have something to do with a psychological evaluation, which she'll now have to have because of the way that she pleaded not guilty. And
these things don't happen quickly.
No, not at all. So it's possible that December is when we are expecting to hear back from that psychological evaluation. It's possible that it could be beyond that, but we're going to be keeping an eye on it as we go.
Shane, a wealth of information as always. Thanks for being our eyes and ears in the courtroom.
Thanks, Jen.
As of this recording, Sarah Baker is back in the Cullman County Detention Facility awaiting a psychological evaluation on an 11-count felony indictment. Her husband testified in open court under oath defending the woman charged with trying to poison him. Prosecutors said he was in grave danger. The judge sided with prosecutors, and Doyle Baker still tried, on the record, to keep his wife out of jail. If new connections in these cases become documented in those filings or testimony, you will hear it here first. Thank you for being here. We want to hear from you. I want to know what cases you want to hear more about. If you've got questions about the judicial system, we'd be glad to answer them right here. Just email me, jennifer.horton@wbrc.com. Put podcast in the subject line. And if this is the kind of reporting that matters to you, please subscribe and follow. We don't want you to miss anything. I'll see you right back here next week. Thanks for being here.